Mrs. Barbeau sat down beside the bed and looked at her daughter Emily. She was still unconscious. Mrs. Barbeau couldn't get her head around what and how this happened to her daughter. Emily was only 22 years old when she moved out of her house and rented a small apartment in Anaheim. Mrs. Barbeau had 2 daughters, Emily and Wilma. Wilma was older than Emily. She lived in Texas with her family. Mrs. Barbeau's husband passed away when her daughters were young. She raised them single-handedly. Mrs. Barbeau was almost always lonely now. It was Emily that kept her company now and then. Mrs. Barbeau was devastated. It had been 8 long years Emily has been in this state. It happened one summer day, 8 years ago, when Emily suddenly stopped receiving her calls. Mrs. Barbeau was worried. When Emily hadn't called back the next day, Mrs. Barbeau decided to visit her and see if everything was fine. Panic had set in when she had been knocking and ringing Emily's apartment doorbell, and there was no response. She immediately called the supervisor and had the apartment unlocked. Emily was laying unconscious on the ground. She was still breathing. Mrs. Barbeau called an ambulance. The paramedics arrived and took Emily to the hospital immediately. The doctors could give no explanation to what happened to Emily. They told Mrs. Barbeau if she hadn't found Emily, things could have gone horribly wrong. Emily could have lost her life. Emily fell into a coma. She was in a total unresponsive vegetative state. The doctors tried to give Mrs. Barbeau hope. Sometimes patients regained their consciousness after years of being in a coma. There was still hope. But there was something odd about Emily's case. Emily's hair seemed to be losing its color. It was turning white. Doctors couldn't tell if it was a sign of aging, as Emily still looked young. It was strangely just the hair. Mrs. Barbeau was deeply grieved by seeing her daughter like this. Emily was laying unresponsive on the bed, without a movement, without a word. How did this happen to her? Emily had just attended her morning class. She walked out of the college and headed to the bus stand. The streets were unusually crowded today, and the crowd was unusual as well. Emily looked at groups of street performers walking past her. She peered around and noticed people all carrying the same flyer. Emily finally noticed an advertisement pinned up on the street pole. There was a fair being held up ahead. Emily couldn't resist but check it out. She followed the crowd and soon reached the beautifully decorated street. There were small shops, arcade tents, musicians, and lemonade stands set up one after the other. Emily walked down the fair, stopping to check out each makeshift shop. She enjoyed watching the performers put on their show. Emily had nearly reached to the end of the block. She intended to go around the curb and head back to the bus stand. But Emily hadn't bought a souvenir for the occasion. She looked around through the last of the shops. Emily saw a woman. She had a small table set up with jewelry and small toys arranged on it. All the items looked handmade. Emily looked through the things. She picked up a wooden toy. It was a maze, and inside was a small ball that rolled through it. Emily liked it. She asked the woman how much she was selling it for. "How much is this maze?" "Maze? That is no maze, dear. It is much more complex than that. It is a path to something great. Are you sure you want to buy that?" "Yes, I love puzzles. How much is this?" "As you wish, but I must warn you. Once you begin, there is no way out until you complete the circle of wisdom. It may take you longer than you think." The woman chuckled as Emily took the bag and walked down the street. Emily found her a bit peculiar. Maybe she wasn't from around here. Emily headed to the bus stand again. She fiddled with the maze throughout the whole journey. But she couldn't make the small ball move from its place. It seemed to be stuck. Emily got home at around 2. She dropped all her things onto her bed and went straight to the kitchen to grab lunch. After that, she went back to her room to finish up her work. At around 8 at night, she started wrapping up on her day, going around the house and cleaning up. Emily laid down on her bed and propped up the pillows. She remembered the mace she got at the fair. She kept it on her nightstand. Emily reached out and tried to figure it out. She shook the toy and tried to move the ball, but it was still stuck. Emily flipped the maze over and examined the whole thing. Was there something she was missing? Emily noticed a little hole on the side. She grabbed her hairpin and placed it in. There was a clicking noise. Emily flipped the wooden case around. The ball started rolling down the maze. Finally, Emily started playing the maze. She soon realized it was pretty complicated. The small mazes she used to get at the laundromat was way simpler than this one. Emily couldn't get far through the game. After some time, she checked her phone. Nearly an hour had gone by, and Emily was nowhere near solving it. After a while, Emily shrugged and threw it onto the side. She pulled up her blankets and closed her eyes. She needed to snooze. The next morning, Emily woke up bright and early. She took a shower, blow-dried her hair, picked out an outfit, and got dressed. Lastly, as she put on her flats, she hopped out the door. When Emily stood up, she was confused. What just happened? She was still standing in her hallway. Emily scratched her head. Didn't she just open the door and step out? Emily looked behind her. Her front door was still closed. Emily shook her head and opened the door. But as strange as it was, Emily stepped into her hallway again. What was going on? Emily started to panic. Was she hallucinating? Was she dreaming? How can this be possible? Emily closed the door and went back to her room. She cleared her mind and went to open her front door again. But the same thing happened. She was stuck in her apartment. Emily was sure something wasn't right. Hours had gone by since Emily had been trying to leave the apartment. Emily picked up her phone. She called her mother. But her mother didn't pick up. Emily tried calling every number on the phone, but no one answered her, until finally, her elder sister did. "Wilma, I need your help. I'm stuck in the apartment. I can't come out. Wilma, I need you to come to my apartment right now. Wilma, can you hear me?" Suddenly, the phone got disconnected. Emily was terrified by what was happening to her. What was she going to do? Emily paced around the house before going back to the door. Her head was starting to spin. She took a deep breath and opened the door again. Emily cried as she looked at her hallway. She ran to her room and jumped on the bed, bursting out in tears. She was shaking in anxiety. How was she going to get out of here? Just then, her hand touched something under her pillow. She lifted it to find the wooden maze. The ball was where she left it. Emily shook the maze around. She suddenly remembered the woman who she bought it from. "As you wish, but I must warn you. Once you begin, there is no way out until you complete the circle of wisdom. It may take longer than you think." Emily handed the woman the money and smiled. "I'm sure solving it will be fun. Thank you." No, it is not just a matter of fun and games. It's much more than that. Losing is not an option, and neither is putting it away. It's a matter of life and death. Are you willing to play? The entrance and exit are one and the same. There will be twists and turns, but you will end where you first begin. And this isn't just any maze, it's a labyrinth. There is only one path. The journey will be long and intense, perhaps for years, maybe even decades. But completion of the labyrinth will reward you with the Stone of Wisdom, the greatest power of all. But if you fail to do so, beware of the spirits that are trapped in the heart of the labyrinth, the ones who dared to begin before you and gave up. The escape, once you begin, is to the end, or you will be doomed, like the others, for eternity in the labyrinth. Emily's elder sister entered the room. She stood by Emily. "How is she doing, Mom?" "The doctors are saying she's improving." "Mom, there's something I've been wanting to tell you." "What is it, Wilma?" "I've been having strange dreams ever since Emily fell into a coma. I don't know if they have some meaning to them or not. Emily keeps calling me. She tells me she's trapped in her apartment. The dreams are starting to haunt me. I know this may sound crazy, but do you think Emily is trying to communicate with us? Wilma, you need to rest. Maybe you're stressing too much." "Wait, Mom, look. Emily, she's moving." "What?" Emily opened her eyes. She suddenly got out of bed and headed towards the door. "Emily, where are you going? Emily!" "There is somewhere I need to be. Something I need to find." Nearly a decade, but it was worth it. Now I possess what none can ever attain: eternal wisdom. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.